The Red Moon Motel sat at the edge of a desolate highway. Its name derived from the crimson hue of the neon sign that bathed the building in an eerie glow. Alan, a traveling salesman, pulled into the empty parking lot, eager to rest before continuing his journey. The desolation of the place didn't faze him. He had stayed in countless motels like this one. The receptionist, a tall man with hollow eyes and a gaunt face, handed Alan the key to room 8. "Enjoy your stay," he murmured, his voice devoid of warmth. Alan noticed a strange scar on the man's wrist, but thought nothing of it. Room 8 was musty, with a single flickering light bulb and outdated decor. Alan tossed his bag on the bed and opened the window to let in some fresh air. The night was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. He tried to settle in, but a sense of unease lingered. As Alan prepared for bed, he noticed something odd about the mirror above the dresser. It seemed slightly off-kilter, as if it had been moved recently. He tried to adjust it, but it was fixed firmly to the wall. Shrugging off the feeling, he turned off the light and climbed into bed. Just as he was drifting off, Alan heard a faint whisper. He sat up, straining to listen. The whispering grew louder, coming from behind the mirror. Heart racing, he approached the mirror and pressed his ear against it. The whispers were clearer now, chanting in an unknown language. Alan's hand trembled as he pried at the edges of the mirror, finally managing to dislodge it. Behind the mirror, he found a small, dark passageway. Fear gripped him, but curiosity pushed him to shine his flashlight into the space. It revealed a narrow tunnel leading into darkness. Against his better judgment, Alan squeezed into the passage. The whispers intensified, guiding him deeper into the motel's hidden recesses. He followed the tunnel until it opened into a hidden room. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and in the center of the room stood a large stone altar, stained with what looked like dried blood. On the altar lay an old book, its pages filled with cryptic text and disturbing illustrations. As Alan flipped through it, he realized it was a grimoire, a book of dark rituals. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening now. He felt an overwhelming urge to read aloud from the book. Before he could resist, his lips began to move, reciting the incantations. The room grew colder, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. Shadows emerged from the corners, coalescing into a dark figure with piercing red eyes. The figure reached out, and Alan felt a cold, suffocating grip around his throat. Desperate, he tried to fight back, but the shadows consumed him, pulling him into the darkness. His last thought was of the receptionist's scarred wrist, and he understood too late that he was the latest victim in a long line of sacrifices. The next morning, the receptionist welcomed a new guest with hollow eyes and a gaunt face, a fresh scar on his wrist. "Room 8 is available," he said, handing over the key. The Red Moon Motel stood silent and waiting, its dark secrets ready to claim another soul. Willow Creek Motel stood alone on the outskirts of a forgotten town. Its neon sign flickered ominously in the gathering dusk. Jessica, weary from her cross-country drive, decided to stay for the night. The motel's isolation didn't bother her. She welcomed the solitude. The receptionist, an elderly woman with an unsettling smile, handed Jessica the key to room 13. "Sleep tight," she said with a chuckle that sent a shiver down Jessica's spine. Jessica's room was small but clean, with a large window that overlooked the dense woods behind the motel. She closed the curtains tightly, trying to block out the eerie feeling creeping over her. Exhausted, she fell into a restless sleep. At midnight, Jessica awoke to a faint sound like whispering. She sat up, heart pounding, and strained to hear. The whispers grew louder, seeming to come from the other side of the wall. She pressed her ear against it and froze as the whispers turned into unmistakable words. "Get out while you can." Panicking, Jessica grabbed her phone to call the front desk, but found it had no signal. She tried to shake off the fear, telling herself it was just her imagination. But the whispers persisted, now accompanied by a soft, scratching sound, like nails on wood. Determined to leave, she packed her things hastily. As she opened the door, the hallway lights flickered, and the air grew colder. Jessica glanced back one last time and saw a shadow move across her room. She bolted for the reception area, but the lobby was empty, and the old woman was nowhere to be found. Jessica ran to her car, but it wouldn't start. Frustration turned to terror as she saw figures emerging from the woods, their eyes glowing in the darkness. She dashed back to the motel, hoping to find another way out. As she reached the end of the hallway, she saw a door marked "Basement." Desperate, she threw it open and descended into the pitch blackness, hoping for an exit. The whispers followed her, louder and more insistent. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into darkness. Jessica fumbled for her phone's flashlight and shone it around, revealing a room lined with old, blood-stained furniture. In the center of the room, she saw a figure chained to the wall, its face contorted in eternal agony. Before she could scream, the whispers erupted into maniacal laughter, and the figure's eyes snapped open, glowing with malevolent light. Jessica felt cold hands grasp her from the darkness, pulling her into the shadows. The last thing she heard was the old woman's voice, whispering in her ear, "Welcome to Willow Creek Motel. You're never leaving." The next morning, the receptionist greeted a new traveler with that same unsettling smile. "Room 13 is available," she said, handing over the key. The cycle of terror at Willow Creek Motel continued, its dark secrets waiting for the next unsuspecting guest. The Ravenwood Motel was infamous among locals, its reputation tainted by eerie tales and strange disappearances. Jenna, traveling alone on a stormy night, had no choice but to seek refuge there. The storm had cut her journey short, and the motel's flickering sign was a beacon of reluctant hope. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with a nervous smile, handed her the key to room 11. "It's been a quiet night," he said, almost as if he were trying to convince himself. Jenna noticed his hands trembled slightly as he passed the key. Room 11 was a stark contrast to the welcoming light of the lobby. It was dimly lit, and the wallpaper was peeling. Jenna tried to ignore the unease that settled over her and focused on getting some rest. The rain pounded against the windows, and the wind howled like a distant cry. She settled into bed, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The room felt oppressive, as if the very walls were closing in on her. Restless, Jenna got up and decided to walk the hallway, hoping to clear her mind. The hallway was long and dimly lit, with shadows dancing in the corners. As Jenna walked, she heard soft footsteps echoing behind her. She turned, but the corridor was empty. Her unease grew, but she continued walking, convinced it was just her imagination. After a few minutes, Jenna realized she had been walking for longer than seemed possible. She should have reached the end of the hallway by now, but it stretched on endlessly. Panic set in as she quickened her pace, hoping to find a staircase or an exit. The lights flickered, and the air grew colder. The footsteps returned, this time louder and more insistent. Jenna turned again and saw a figure at the far end of the hallway, shrouded in darkness. She couldn't make out any features, but she felt its eyes on her, watching, waiting. Desperate, Jenna broke into a run. No matter how fast she ran, the hallway never ended. and the figure grew closer. The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers began soft at first, then growing louder, more frantic. They spoke of lost souls, trapped forever in the endless corridors of Ravenwood Motel. Jenna's breath came in ragged gasps as she spotted a door marked "Exit." She lunged for it, her heart pounding with hope. But when she burst through the door, she found herself back in the same hallway, staring at the same endless stretch of darkness. The figure was closer now, its features becoming clearer. It was a man, or what was left of him, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Welcome to your new home," he rasped, his voice a chilling echo. Jenna's scream was swallowed by the darkness as the figure reached for her. The last thing she felt was a cold hand on her shoulder, pulling her into the shadows. The next morning, the receptionist greeted a new guest with a nervous smile. "Room 11 is available," he said, his hands trembling as he handed over the key. The endless corridor of Ravenwood Motel remained, its dark secrets and lost souls waiting for the next unwary traveler.